Welcome back to another live Wednesday training where every Wednesday I go live talking about all things mindset, health, wealth, relationships, fatherhood, all the things that are going to help make you a more well-rounded father, husband, and man so that you can go back into your family's lives, go back into your communities, and not only selfishly live the highest version of who you are, but because of that, you are a better leader for those in your community, your family, and wherever you're at. This week's training, we're going to be talking about king energy and why you want to have this. It is the ultimate archetype out of all of them. And we're going to talk about what it is, number one. Number two, we're going to get into how to actually access it. And then three, we're going to talk about what gets in the way from us accessing it. And that's known as the shadow king or the tyrant king. And this is an archetype that we see play in our lives. Okay. Now, for those of you that don't know me, before we jump into this week's trainings, my name is Joel Evan. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a coach. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have two beautiful kids, 10 and 7. I've been married and with my wife for 15 years, and 10 of those years were not good. They were rocky. They were unstable. There were many times we almost threw in the towel and called for divorce, but we didn't. And I didn't think we would actually survive, to be honest, and neither did my wife. But it's crazy when we started to figure things out and we put in the work. It only took 3 months and we radically changed our marriage. I actually was the first person to start. My wife challenged me and I was able to change everything in 3 months, and it's only gotten better. And so I know it's possible for you, any man that's out there that's listening. I know it's possible for you. And that's my mission, to empower you to build unshakable marriages and deeper connection with our kids, because at the end of our day, we're going to be dead. And we're going to live with regrets. And I hope you don't live with that, wishing that you had more connection with your kids or that you were still married to your high school sweetheart. Now, if you're interested in learning anything about our programs or what we do, the free ones, the paid ones, or you just want to connect with me and talk about what would it be like to join one of our communities or possibly even work one-on-one, just comment below, drop me a line, and I will get you the details. Now, let's talk about king energy, okay? King energy is this. They walk in the ways. They live according to the Tao or the Tao. If not, nothing will go right for the people at the kingdom at whole, which means men have to live by a creed, okay? They have to have a way of living, standards, some type of creed is what that's saying. And now if you look at the Tao Te Ching or the Tao Te Ching, however you want to pronounce it, or you look at Taoism, they live by principles, guys. They live by universal laws, one might call it. We hear that a lot as well. When you live by the universal laws and when you walk a path and you walk the way, that is what a king does. A king must have a path that he's walking on. Otherwise, the world just takes you whichever way you want to go. We know that. I talk about that a lot in my training. Now, the other key components of a king is that he must manifest fertility and blessing. He must be fruitful and multiply. Now, we're going to get into that. Some of you might be thinking, oh, so you must have a lot of kids. Well, I'm not saying that. I only have 2, but they do say that people or men with a lot of kids, they really have this king energy. And you see some of the most successful men, supposedly, with multiple kids. Someone I was just talking to about this idea was like, yeah, Elon Musk has like 9 kids or something like that. I don't know if that's true. And again, some of you might be thinking, well, come on, that doesn't mean he's the most successful just because he has a lot of money. True, but we could say there's a lot of success that can be derived from his life, whether it's money, whether it's wealth, whether it's fame, whether it's being disruptive and doing something amazing in the world and whether, I don't even know if electric cars is amazing, but he is an innovator, right? We can at least say that he is a generator. I think that's pretty cool. The second part of being a king and displaying what's known as king energy is you have to be a blessing. And a blessing means it could be psychological or it could be spiritual, some type of event, right? And so I'm going to get into the details of that. But the good king always mirrored and affirmed others who deserved it, okay? He did this by seeing them in a literal sense, in his audiences, at the palace, and in the psychological sense of just noticing them, knowing them in their true worth. And when I think and I read about that, I think about being present, being so present, right, with our kids and our wives. The good king, it says, he delighted in noticing and promoting good men to positions of responsibility in his kingdom. Part of being a good leader is delegating responsibility so that you can teach others, not just be the only guy that can do it all, okay? They say that bodies actually change chemically when we feel valued, praised and blessed. We know that. We see that a lot. And young men at this time, I think, more than ever, they're starving from blessings from older men. They're starving from this king energy, and they really shouldn't have to. They need to be blessed. They need to be seen by the king, because if they are, something inside of them is going to come alive within them. And the blessing heals and makes them whole. And then guess what? They go out and they do more. I see a lot of tyrants out in the world. They try to bring people like me and others down. That's the shadow king. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, right? They get jealous of everybody. But the king, that energy, it stabilizes chaotic motion. When things are out of control, that's when the king comes in. Centered, grounded, bringing calm. And in its fertilizing and centeredness, it mediates vitality, life source, and joy. The king brings maintenance, balance. It's what defends our own sense of inner order, our own integrity of being on purpose. So when you think of centeredness, calmness, just someone who can be unassailed, who can be untriggered, who's like, give me your best shot, none of that happens. That's the masculine, and that's the ultimate part of the king energy, right? It sees others and all their weaknesses and all their talent and all their worth, and it honors them and it promotes them. It guides them, it nurtures them toward their own fullness of being, and it's not envious, because a secure king, that's what it is. He's a secure king. And he knows his own worth. And so that's why a king will go out and reward and encourage others' creativity in all of us and all the others. It's this incorporation, right? It's part of the warrior archetype, which many of you might already know, which is that kind of that aggression, right? To go out and achieve, kill, hunt, conquer. But it also has that power of inner authority. It knows and it's able to discern and act out of this deep knowingness. And it's able to show compassion, love. It delights in us and in others. It shows delight through the words, praise. This is the king. It's that beautiful duality, right? And it is the energy that expresses through a man when he takes the necessary financial and psychological steps to ensure that his wife and children prosper, right? This is the kind of energy, guys, that encourages their wives when she decides she wants to go back to school or start a new business or start something new. Like my wife's going to bodybuilding competitions, right? It's the energy that expresses itself through a father when he takes time off work to attend his son's piano recital. It's the energy that through the boss confronts the rebellious subordinates at the office without having to fire them. It's the energy that expresses itself through the assembly line foreman when he's able to work with the recovering alcoholics and the drug abusers in his charge to support their sobriety and to give them empowering masculine guidance and nurturing. This is the energy that expresses itself through you when you're able to keep your cool when everybody else in the meeting is losing theirs. It's the voice of calm. It's the voice of reassurance. It's the encouraging words in the time of chaos and struggle. That's what I always think about when leaders are calm during battle, right? They're able to detach. Jocko Willing talks about that a lot, being able to detach emotionally, right? Everyone else is fearful, but courage is contagious. You can be that. You can be that king, that clear decision. After careful deliberation. It cuts through all the mess at family, at work, at the nation, the world. This is the energy that seeks peace and stability, orderly growth, and the nurturing of all people, and not only for all people, but their environment and their natural world. And the king cares for the whole realm. He is the steward of nature as well as for human society. So think of the shepherd of the people, the gardener, the voice, again, that affirms clearly and calmly with authority the human rights of all. This is the energy that maximizes punishment and maximizes praise. It's that beautiful duality, guys. Now let's talk about how we can actually access that energy. This is part 2 of the 3 parts of this mini training. Number 1 is you got to disidentify from your ego. You got to subordinate it, like Jocko says also. You got to subordinate from the ego. The ego is trying to keep you safe, doesn't think you're good enough. You got to disassociate from all that. Right? The ego of the mature man needs to think of itself. No matter what status or power it has temporarily achieved. As the servant of transpersonal will or cause, it needs to think of itself, but for the benefit of those within its realm, whatever that may be. Now, when the ego is identified with the king energy itself, it has no transpersonal commitment. He is his own priority because a man's ego has not been able to maintain its proper orbit. it has fallen into the sun of the archetype, or it's drifted so close that it's just drawn off, as we start to see in double star systems. So there's a kind of a tie-in with astrology here, right? And then you see a lot of enormous amounts of ignited gases, and they become bloated with all of them. Now the whole psyche destabilizes. And so the planet is pretending to be a star, but the true center of the system is lost. And this is what we call usurpation syndrome. And this is where the ego usurps the king's place and power. This is the mythological rebellion in heaven. This is when an upstart god tries to seize the throne of the high god. This is Satan's attempt to overthrow God. And this also arises when we feel that we have lost effective touch with the life-giving king altogether. And in this case, we might even fall into the category of the so-called dependent personality disorder, right? It's a condition in which in which we project the king energy within which we do not experience as within us onto some external person. And we experience ourselves as impotent, incapable of acting, incapable of feeling calm and stable without that presence and the loving attention of that other person who's carrying our king energy projection. And so how do we see this in our normal lives? I know I'm getting a lot of woo-woo and mythology here, but I'm going to bring it back home. How do we see this in our family currently in 2024? This happens in family systems when husbands become too attentive to their wives' moods and fear to take initiative because of the attacking anger their actions may bring. It happens too with children when their parents do not allow them to develop insufficient independence of will and taste and purpose, and the children remain under their wing. It happens in work situations. This happens when we become too dependent upon the power and the whims of the boss, or when we feel that we don't dare squeeze around our coworkers. We don't want to rock the boat. It happens on a larger scale. We see it politically with nations, when people regarding themselves as peasants turn over all their inner king energy to de fure, right? This is this abdication syndrome, the hallmark of a weakling. And it's just as disastrous as usurpation syndrome, which we spoke about earlier. Now I'm going to get into part 3. This is part 3. We're going to talk about how to avoid this and what the duality is. We know what the shadow king is. We know to access that, you got to subordinate your ego. Now the shadow king, the tyrant, the weakling, the jealous person, that's the opposite. And the tyrant, we know, hates, fears, envies new life, because that new life, he senses it's a threat to him, and it's a threat to his kingship. And the tyrant king is not the center and does not feel calm, does not feel generative. He's not creative. He's only destructive. These are the Newsoms. These are the people who are weak, have no courage, and they look to tear other people down. They look down to tear down other kings because they're insecure of their own. They're not sure who they are. But if he were secure in his own generativity and his own inner order, his self-structure, his self-worth, he would react with delight at the birth of a new life in his realm. But the tyrant exploits and abuses others. Tyrants, they're ruthless, merciless, without any feeling when he is pursuing what he thinks is how in his own self-interest. It's the degradation of others, and it knows no bounds. These are the tyrants. These are the petty tyrants, but you got to love them too. Wayne Dyer talks about this. You got to love the petty tyrants because they're here for one reason. They're here to teach you something. They're here to teach us all something, to make us stronger, better, learn something new that maybe we don't know. But the tyrant king hates all beauty, all innocence, all strength, all talent, all life energy. And he does this because he lacks inner structure and he's afraid. He's terrified, really, of his own hidden weakness and his own underlying lack of potency. It is the shadow king as tyrant in the father who makes war on his sons and daughters' joy and strength and their abilities and vitality. He fears their freshness, their newness of being, and the life force surging through them, and he seeks to kill it. I've been there so many times and made so many mistakes with my kids, trying to kill some of that inner energy out of them, and I never knew why, and it had everything to do with me, nothing to do with them. And I learned, I get better. You see them do this with open verbal assaults, the deprecation of their own interests, hopes, talents, or Alternatively, ignoring their accomplishments, turning their back on their disappointments, registering boredom, lack of interest. When, for instance, you'll see people, they come home from school and they present them with a piece of artwork or a good grade. Maybe your kids show you like their good grades, their artwork. Dad, look at me, look what I did. And you have nothing. You don't praise them. You don't love them. You don't share anything about them. That's the Tyrant King, guys. Avoid that at all costs. If you want to learn more about my app on stores, the Limitless Fathers app, I've got a free version on there. There's another version. I think it's $7. If you guys want to upgrade to that, it comes with a communication module. Probably the number one thing that I hear in all relationship breakdowns is communication breakdowns. So you get that with the paid version. It's got a community of men like myself in there offering advice, encouragement. There's also a 3-day free course, the Elite Dad Habit Stacks in there, a whole bunch of cool things. I would highly check that out if you want, but if you don't, that's fine too. And if you want to learn more about other things that I'm doing in my community of men, or again, working one-on-one with me, myself, or if you're a couple and you want to fortify your bond and build an unshakable marriage with my wife and myself. My wife has a bachelor's in child development and a master's in counseling. She's a pretty savvy woman and she actually lives with me. So forget all the degrees. I'm always about results and she gets them. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do for couples, you can also reach out to me. I hope you guys have a terrific rest of your week and you start coming with generation and king energy into this week and you avoid all the pitfalls that the ego is doing and trying to bring you down. None of us want that. Stay tuned to next week for next week's training, guys. I love you guys all.